America. O beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. The first thing we did whenever we arrived at a national park was to look for a vacant campsite. Most of them had a wooden table and a fireplace, but it took a bit of skill to maneuver the car and trailer into the best spot for them to be parked. Then we would unload the equipment from the rooftop and set up our camp. Everyone had an assigned task to get things ready for sleeping and eating. We used these neat little self-supporting pop tents, which took some muscle power to push the top down and fasten the latch, but then the bottom would just pop out and it would stand by itself. Though we couldn't quite figure out how David had gotten inside this one. We had to have a quick and easy system for packing and unpacking because almost every night we were in a new place. Our neighbors in adjoining campsites were invariably friendly and pleasant, and we always hung out this small wooden sign to let them know that we were the 5 Barstows from Wethersfield, Connecticut. Our homemade portable pantry proved to be a great help when it came to making sandwiches and preparing simple campsite meals. After lunch, we took a fascinating tour led by a park ranger to see some of the most amazing archaeological ruins any place on Earth. 1,000 years ago, this area had been inhabited by Pueblo Indians who were mostly farmers. Their evolving culture reached its peak in the 1300s when, for some unknown reason, the Pueblos moved into great caves on the sides of the canyon walls, where they constructed incredible cliff dwellings with a unique kind of carved stone architecture. But after dwelling here for less than 100 years, these Pueblos all moved out, possibly because of a long drought, and they mysteriously vanished from history. The enormous cliff dwellings still stand, now being preserved almost as they were when abandoned 700 years ago. Cliff Palace is the largest of the ruins, with both round and square towers several stories high and more than 200 rooms believed to have housed up to 500 people. Heading further west and south to the border between Utah and Arizona, we had our first view of the mystical vistas of Monument Valley. These fantastic buttes, mesas, and pinnacles rising up to 1,000 feet above the desert floor are the work of nature over millions of years, carved by wind and water, and now a never-to-be-forgotten part of the Navajo Tribal Park on the nation's largest Indian reservation. Monument Valley's 2 most photogenic landmarks are the giant twin buttes known as the Mittens, because of the rock spires sticking out like thumbs on each of their sides. They have provided the dramatic setting for many Western movies. Arizona was our 47th state, but the dry heat as we drove across its desert wastelands was almost unbearable. We had purchased a canvas water bag which we kept tied to the front bumper of the car so the wind blowing through it would keep the water cool. Every once in a while we would stop and take turns drinking from the bag. Daniel, age 10, David, age 13, Mary, age 16, Meg, age 40, and Robbins, age 41. Swallowing large gulps of the cool, refreshing drink helped clear up the atmosphere and return the color to our faces and clothes. It kept us going for our next big travel adventure. Arizona is the home state for one of the greatest of all the world's natural wonders, the Grand Canyon of the Colorado River. We had arrived at the Desert View campground too late for sightseeing the first night, but the next morning, after a tasty breakfast of bacon and eggs cooked on our Coleman stove at our campsite, we were ready to follow the Watchtower Trail to the south rim and look out for the very first time on this unbelievably huge chasm carved out over millions of years by the force of the now tiny river far below. The gorge stretches out 12 miles across, 1 mile deep, and more than 200 miles long. We had all seen photos of this overwhelmingly spectacular canyon, but they could not prepare us for the awesome reality of actually experiencing it on the scene in person. On this wall, I couldn't resist the impulse to jump off down onto a lower level where I could get a better view of the vastness and variety of the canyon's multicolored rocky walls at every place and time of day. Before leaving the Grand Canyon, we had the opportunity to visit the Pueblo settlement of a local tribe of Hopi Indians and to witness the performance of some remarkable ceremonial dances. The highly athletic dancers wore brilliantly colored costumes as they circled and chanted in traditional rites invoking rain and good harvests for their crops. In one beautifully symbolic dance, two braves wore eagle feathers on their arms in tribute to these great local birds of flight. The favorite feat for park visitors was the amazing hoop dance performed by a young Hopi with incredible speed and agility, jumping continuously through a single hoop time and time again. And now we were approaching the long-awaited climax of our epic summer journey, entering our last new state, Nevada. We found that the borderline between Arizona and Nevada was located right in the middle of the curved roadway on top of the giant Hoover Dam blocking the Colorado River. We parked our car on the Arizona side and walked up to the boundary line where there was a metal plaque marking the spot. And at 4:48 p.m. on Thursday, July 20th, 1961, the Barstow family all together stepped over the line into their 48th state. How many states have we now been into? We got a friendly tourist to film our raised arms count. 48. As Mary wrote in her journal, now when we meet anyone from any state except Alaska and Hawaii, we can say, oh yes, we've been there. These dramatic winged figures overlooking the dam point skyward to our nation's flag, 48 of whose stars we now could identify with. Hoover Dam itself is a monumental engineering achievement, built in 1935 and over 700 feet high, providing flood control, irrigation, and great amounts of electrical energy. It also has created the world's largest man-made reservoir, Lake Mead, whose recreation area has become a popular vacation spot. This is where we camped that night, enjoying a refreshing swim in the lake, though the minute you rose from the water, your body was completely dried off by blasts of hot air. That evening, we celebrated by going into nearby Las Vegas to see what gambling was like. We loved the bright lights, but we each learned our lesson by losing a quarter to a one-armed bandit slot machine. Moving on into Southern California, we had the fun of visiting the town with the same name as ours, Barstow, at what they call the intersection of opportunity, right in the middle of the Mojave Desert. We stopped at the city hall and learned that the town had been a frontier mining settlement and railroad junction, given the name of Barstow in 1886 after the president of the Atlantic and Pacific Railroad Company, William Barstow Strong. The folks at City Hall called the editor of the local newspaper, who did an interview with us that was published on July 26th in the Barstow Desert Dispatch. The caption under their photo read, "The Barstow family arrived last week to visit their namesake town. They are from Wethersfield, Connecticut, and have spent 5 summers camping across the United States." Sequoia National Park is located in the Sierra Nevada mountains near the center of California. This is where the tall trees are, the tallest on Earth. Some of these giant sequoias are hundreds of feet high and thousands of years old. As we contemplated the incredible size of these enormous trunks, we suddenly found ourselves face to face with 2 other families from our hometown of Wethersfield, Connecticut. The Willards and the Irwins, who by amazing coincidence were camping here all the way across the country at the same time we were. The growth rings on this cross-section of an ancient stump indicate that at the time Jesus was born, shown by this marker, the tree was already several hundred years old. And here we also found the famous General Sherman tree, the largest in the world, 272 feet tall, and perhaps the oldest living thing on Earth, with an estimated age of more than 3,500 years. Then we came to Yosemite, half a day's drive north of Sequoia Park. We arrived at dusk at the southern entrance, where there was a fantastic gateway cut right through the middle of another giant sequoia tree. This famous Wawona tunnel tree was hollowed out in 1881 for